Well, welcome to the 700 Club. The top leader of Hamas was assassinated in Iran just hours after an Israeli strike killed a high-ranking leader of Hezbollah in Beirut.
Well, Iran is blaming Israel for the assassination and is threatening a harsh response. Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
Iran media announced Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated in Tehran after attending the inauguration of Iran's new president. Reports indicate he was killed in an airstrike at the location where he was staying. Israel has not commented on the reports, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared after the October 7th attack that the leaders of Hamas were dead men walking. The attack carried out inside Iran could ramp up the conflict in the Middle East. Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei threatened, "It is our duty to take revenge and severely punish the Zionist entity for the assassination in Iran, because the assassination was carried out on our soil." It's the second major blow against Israel's Iranian-backed enemies on the same day. Earlier, the IDF confirmed it eliminated Fuad Shukr, one of Hezbollah's top leaders in Beirut.
Fuad Shukr was the commander responsible for the Majd al-Shams massacre, in which 12 children were murdered after Hezbollah fired an Iranian Falak 1 rocket directly at a soccer field in northern Israel on Saturday evening. He was a senior terrorist who has the blood of the Israelis and many others on his hands.
Shukr also participated in the 1983 Beirut bombing that killed 241 U.S. Marines.
My assessment is that Hezbollah will respond to this, and then the IDF already has other targets ready.
Jonathan Conricus from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies tells CBN News Hezbollah's next step is critical.
Where I think that we should be looking forward now is to see what type of response will Hezbollah provide, where will they fire, which type of weapons will they use, and then, of course, the second, third, and fourth, and fifth layer of responses that the IDF has ready to Hezbollah's responses.
The strike came after Hezbollah killed 12 children in a Druze village on the Lebanese border. Conricus says it's important to remember Iran is the power behind the terror group.
As long as Israel doesn't present a strategy and starts to demand a price of the Iranian regime for killing Jews in the Middle East, in Israel, then I don't think that the situation will change, because everything that we see happening since October 7 and many years before that, but greatly so after October the 7th, all of that is related to Iran.
Conricus says it's hard to predict whether this may lead to full-scale war.
There's always unknown things that can happen, and then the enemy does things, we will respond, and we can find ourselves in uncharted territory, which wasn't part of the strategy. But if cooler heads prevail, and if the strategic aims will be pursued, then I don't think that Israel and Hezbollah will be going to a major war.
Well, Chris Mitchell joins us now from Jerusalem. So, Chris, let's talk about Iran. Is Israel expecting a harsh response? That's what they promised. Are they expecting that today?
Well, don't know exactly when that may happen, Gordon, but they are certainly anticipating reaction by either or both Iran and Hezbollah. It's interesting that today, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, he visited the Arrow anti-missile system, and that was one of the defense systems that shot down, 300 and some of those 350 projectiles that Iran, fired on April 13th. So whether or not Iran is going to directly attack Israel, or it may use one of its proxies. That's really been its method of operation for many years. We'll see what happens. One former general Israeli was telling reporters today that regardless of what Iran does, it's important that America backs Israel right now, which might make Iran more cautious in its response. So it remains to be seen what's happening, but certainly right here in Israel, people are watching and waiting to see what's going to happen next. Just a stunning, incredible intelligence operations, Gordon, what happened. 2 foreign capitals, enemy capitals, precise locations without massive civilian casualties, and also following a major strike against the Houthis in Yemen just about 2 weeks ago.
It is amazing how Israel seems to have so much intelligence here. But I do wonder, is the ceasefire and the return of the hostages one of the casualties of this? Who is now going to negotiate on behalf of Hamas, and will they have the authority to actually come to a deal?
A lot of people think it is a blow to the negotiations and actually strengthens the hands of Sinwar, who's actually in Gaza right now. Hania and Sinwar were rivals in Hamas, and so right now sort of he holds the leverage in terms of the hostages, 115 that still remain in Gaza. So it really does make a possible negotiation for these hostages perhaps less likely right now, really a blow to many of the families of the hostages.
Well, what can you tell us about the Hezbollah commander? You know, it's amazing to me that he orchestrated the attack on the Marine Corps all the way back in the Reagan administration. I'm old enough to remember all of that, and the fact that he had a bounty on his head, a $5 million reward, and we didn't seem to be able to get him, and now Israel has. How important is he to Hezbollah, and how might they respond?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how they're going to respond. I'm old enough to remember that Marine barracks bombing as well. He was very influential. We talked to General Amidor earlier. He was a former national security advisor. He says he's not going to be very easy to replace. He built up Hezbollah over a military force for decades. He was actually managing Hezbollah's advanced weaponry. And what that does is include the precision-guided missiles, Gordon. And how they respond, it's really up to Hezbollah right now. And will the situation in the north remain the same? But they have other options. They could increase their attacks. They do have a formidable rocket and missile arsenal. Will they hit places like Tel Aviv? It remains to be seen. But they also have a global network. They're in Syria, Iraq, in Lebanon, but also in South America, Venezuela, Europe, and Africa. And they also have sleeper cells in the United States. So they have a lot of options of how they may want to retaliate.
Well, Chris, you're going to keep me up at night, but please stay safe in Jerusalem, and thanks so much for your reporting and for the insights. And for you at home, let's keep in mind that it seems our policy, our foreign policy, has been some kind of containment. So here you have a leading Hezbollah commander who's living in Beirut, and it seems to be kind of obvious he is. He masterminded an attack on our barracks, and our soldiers died, and nothing happened to him. We thought that, you know, a $5 million bounty was going to be enough. But it's amazing to me that when he starts to strike Israel, well, then there's an immediate retaliation. I would urge you in lobbying right now, our State Department, our administration, our Senate, our Congress, we have to start acting here. If we have this policy of containment, that as long as it's happening in the Middle East, it's okay, but if at what point in time is it going to come to our shores? 9/11 was a wake-up call for all of us that, yes, indeed, it can come to our shores. Is it going to take activation of one of these sleeper cells before we finally wake up? Iran is a real problem, and not just a problem for the Middle East, not just a problem for Israel. But when they call us the Great Satan, they really mean it, and they're out to get us. So please, let's wake up to that and realize this containment policy we've been doing for decades is not working. In other news, the acting director of the Secret Service told lawmakers he felt ashamed of the agency's failure to protect former President Donald Trump. CBN News Washington correspondent Tara Mergener has more.
Senate lawmakers pressed key players overseeing the protection of former President Trump as to why there are so few answers about oversights leading up to the failed assassination attempt. In this latest hearing, the FBI's number 2 person told lawmakers the Secret Service failed, not local law enforcement.
So help you God.
Testifying before 2 Senate committees, Acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe had this to say after traveling to the rally site in Butler, Pennsylvania.
I went to the roof of the AGR building where the assailant fired shots, and I laid in a prone position to evaluate his line of sight. What I saw made me ashamed.
Rowe's statement is the agency's most direct admission of guilt since the July 13th shooting.
As a career law enforcement officer and a 25-year veteran with the Secret Service, I cannot defend why that roof was not better secured.
Rowe took over following Director Kimberly Cheadle's resignation after she refused to answer questions about communication failures during a House hearing.
Your obfuscating today is shameful.
Tuesday, Rowe also said a social media account believed to be associated with shooter Thomas Crooks espoused political violence, anti-Semitic ideas, and also detailed the failure of a drone detection system used by his agency before Crooks began firing at Trump.
The Secret Service is negligent, incompetent, and there's a cultural failure within their organization. In short, it's a dysfunctional organization.
The local SWAT team that played a pivotal role that day is speaking out about what went wrong.
He was looking up and down the building and just wandering around, and it just seemed out of place.
It's unclear if that information reached Trump's Secret Service detail, and the locals complained they had no contact or preparation prior to the rally.
We were supposed to get a face-to-face briefing with the Secret Service snipers whenever they arrived, and that never happened.
Monday night, Trump defended the Secret Service agents protecting him while also insisting someone should have been on the roof and that communication with local police should have been better. Trump has agreed to be interviewed by FBI agents and expects that to take place on Thursday. In Washington, Tara Mergener, CBN News.
We certainly expect more from the Secret Service. We have to recognize the courage of the agents who surrounded Donald Trump on that day. They literally put their own bodies, their own lives at risk in order to protect him. But the Overwatch, how could a sniper get that close with that kind of line of sight, and the failures of communication, coordination, and then just oversight? How do you lock down a position and make sure that everyone is going to be safe? This is going to be a game changer for the Secret Service. I hope they get the resources they need, but most of all, can we cooperate and coordinate and communicate so that our candidates for office are safe? Talk about turmoil in America. We're a divided nation. If one of these candidates gets harmed campaigning for office, we are all going to suffer.